Something weird is going on with TF2's player numbers. Twifty recently made an excellent video talking about player count, which I'll link in the description and I recommend that you watch. In it, he asked a very good question. Why are player numbers reported by sites like steamcharts.com, which counts all players with the game open, so different to the ones reported by Teamwork.tf, which counts all players that are actually in game servers? I decided to investigate this, and it very quickly became clear that the reason is not because Steam Charts counts players cumulatively over the course of an hour, as is often claimed. And I will discuss in detail why that is a misunderstanding in this video. But what surprised me even more as I investigated this claim was the whole host of other weirdness happening with TF2's daily player numbers that I've never seen anyone talk about before, and as far as I can tell, cannot easily be explained. So first, let's clarify what the actual differences are between Steam Charts and Teamwork.tf. Now, I will mostly be talking about steamcharts.com in this video, however almost everything I say will apply to all the other sites like SteamDB, Steam Spy and more, because they all get their data directly from Steam itself, and therefore their data is all the same. Anyway, the key difference is that all of these sites count every Steam account with Team Fortress 2 currently open. That is, regardless of whether those players are actually in a server playing a game or not. So maybe they are playing a game, but maybe they are just sorting through their backpack, or currently queued for a match but not actually in one, or they're just idle on the main menu. Whatever it might be, they are counted by Steam Charts. Teamwork.tf, on the other hand, is a community website that scans all of TF2's game servers connected to Steam, and then it counts the players in those servers. So, in other words, Teamwork.tf only shows player numbers of people who are actually in a match right now, and SteamCharts.com shows players in a match right now, and those who've got the game open for any other reason. But during a typical weekday evening, Steam Charts will typically report between 90 and 110,000 players, whilst at the exact same time, Teamwork.tf might report just between 10 and 20,000. Now, we obviously know that the Steam Charts number will be higher, because it's counting all of those people who are in menus that Teamwork.tf isn't counting. But would we really expect 80,000 or more people to be in menus when just 15,000 or so are in servers? Are we saying that it's normal that over 75% of players with the game open are not actually in a match at any given time? This was essentially the question that Twifty asked in his video. And the common community explanation was what I hinted at in the introduction a moment ago. As where Teamwork.tf counts the players in a server at the very moment that you're looking at their website, Steam Charts instead counts every player who opens the game over the course of 1 hour and adds them together. So when Steam Charts says 100,000 people are playing at 8 PM, what it actually means is that 100,000 people open TF2 at any time between 7 PM and 8 PM. Therefore, the actual number at the moment that the clock strikes 8 PM is much lower, and ultimately much closer to the number Teamwork.tf is reporting. So with this explanation, there aren't tens of thousands of people idling on the main menu like it originally appeared. Except, this explanation is completely wrong. Now, I have gathered plenty of evidence to show that this is wrong, but why don't we start with the most damning? I actually just asked the creator of SteamCharts.com on Twitter if I was right in saying that Steam Charts updates once per hour as opposed to cumulatively over the course of that hour. And, well, he confirmed it. So that sort of puts this theory to bed right there. But to further drive the point home, we need to understand where this misinformation even came from. Unfortunately, you don't have to look very far to find that the origin of this claim is nothing other than a random, unsourced Reddit comment. Now, it's not impossible that there is a source before this, however, it's this Reddit comment and thread that everybody points back to when they make the claim themselves. If you look at this thread and comment together, you can start to see how these users convince themselves that this cumulative method of counting is indeed the one that SteamCharts.com is using, even though it isn't. The original post shows the TF2 page on SteamCharts.com and points out that the historic graph shows data every hour on the hour, as where Teamwork.tf says things like 12 minutes ago. However, the user is somehow interpreting this as meaning that Steam Charts is adding data together over the course of the hour, and Teamwork.tf is adding data together over the course of 1 minute. As I already noted, this is a complete misunderstanding. In fact, if you actually look on TF2's Steam Charts page, just above the chart that this Reddit post conveniently crops out, you will see playing 25 minutes ago, etc., depending on what time you happen to check the site. This is the exact same wording that the Reddit post cites on Teamwork.tf as being the justification for the theory, so they're sort of disproving their own hypothesis in the post itself. In reality, both websites collect their respective data from Steam periodically. Steam Charts checks once an hour on the hour, and Teamwork.tf checks roughly every 15 minutes. But the important similarity is that both of them then report the number of players at the moment they checked, not the number of players since the last time they checked, or any other weird additive or cumulative method. To further clarify this point, and to further disprove the claim started on Reddit, Steam's own stats page updates at a 5-minute interval, as opposed to a 1-hour one. So if Steam updates every 5 minutes and Steam Charts updates every hour, how can they possibly show the same number if one is adding an hour's worth of players and the other is adding up just 5 minutes worth? Well, obviously they can't. And finally, to really drive home the point that this whole cumulative counting thing is just wrong, is the fact that every site showing these numbers uses the wording current or concurrent, which is basically the opposite of cumulative in this context. So, the explanation that Steam Charts adds player counts hourly is wrong. The creator of Steam Charts confirmed this. The origin of this explanation is a self-contradicting Reddit post. Sites that use the same numbers but update more frequently, such as Steam itself, clearly disprove this. And finally, every site reporting these numbers specifically says the numbers are current or concurrent, and therefore not cumulative. I hope that pretty comprehensively lays that misinformation to rest. However, if you are still confused or don't believe me, please do leave a comment letting me know why that is, and maybe I just haven't made my point clear enough, and I'll do my best to reiterate. Once it became clear that Steam Charts and Teamwork.tf's numbers could actually be compared, I decided to look at other games on Steam and try to understand what we should expect to see in terms of players in matches versus players with the game open just in the menus. Sure, over 75% of players not being in a match at any given time does sound like a lot, but maybe that is just normal and nothing to be concerned about. Unfortunately, we've only got comparable data on a very small number of Valve multiplayer games provided by the website SteamDB, which scans for players actually in game servers in much the same way that Teamwork.tf does. We've got these numbers not just for TF2, but also for CSGO and Left 4 Dead 1 and 2. Now, as I already said, this is a very small sample size, but if you look at the numbers on screen, one of these is clearly not like the others. With all the data we've got in front of us here, TF2 definitely seems to be an outlier. For some reason, TF2 seems to have a lot more players with the game open who aren't actually in servers than the comparable games. And that is not the end of it. By looking at a whole host of popular multiplayer games on Steam, in other words, the ones it makes most sense to compare with Team Fortress 2, almost all of their daily player graphs look like this. We're looking at how much a game varies from its busiest time of day to its quietest time of day. For most of the games, we see that the lowest daily player numbers are between 40 and 60% of the highest daily player numbers. But Team Fortress 2's chart looks like this. Arguably, there's some peaks and troughs in there, but even compared to the flattest graph of comparable games, TF2 is positively non-conformist. At its least populated time of day, TF2 will still have as many as 85% of players online compared to its most popular time of day. And remember, our comparable games averaged around 50%, so this suggests one of two things. Either Team Fortress 2 has got a very unique global fan base that means traditional peak times are weaker than expected, and traditional off-peak times are stronger than expected, and that no other comparable game on Steam has an even remotely close spread of players. Or TF2 has an abnormal amount of accounts with the game open without being in game servers. The final weirdness I want to talk about before moving on is how rapidly and severely TF2's player numbers increase and decrease. The stat tracking site SteamDB shows data from Steam at 10-minute intervals, allowing us to look at player number changes with a little more accuracy. Here on the 20th of December, players shot up from 70,000 to around 110,000 in just 20 minutes. Then, after a relatively steady day and a half, players drop from 110,000 all the way down to just 40,000 in 10 minutes. Now, to be fair, this sharp downward spike actually seems to coincide with a Steam outage, but it's almost as if these 40,000 accounts were knocked offline by the Steam outage, and as where every other account in the game just came immediately back online, these 40,000 accounts for some reason didn't. This is one particularly obvious example of extreme TF2 player number changes, but rapid increases and decreases like this do seem to happen very regularly. Again, most games gradually gain and lose players over the course of 24 hours in a very uniform fashion, but TF2 typically has much more severe ups and downs, and those ups and downs do not conform to the expected daily global habits. So, to summarize, TF2's in-game numbers and in-server numbers are very strange when compared to the 3 other games that we've got the same data for. TF2's daily player peaks and troughs are very unusual when compared to other popular multiplayer games on Steam. And the severity and frequency of TF2's player number changes are extreme and, again, unlike any other game. So I'll be honest with you here. I don't know what this means. Obviously, TF2 has had a huge problem with hackers and other bots in recent years. But as far as both Steam charts and Teamwork.tf are concerned, those bots are going to be counted as players. Therefore, they'll be in both sets of numbers, and they won't explain these differences. The other hypothesis that comes to my mind is either trade or idle bots. There's no question that there's hundreds or even thousands of TF2 trade bots, but do these bots even need the game open to trade? And are there that many bots to account for the tens of thousands of unexplained accounts that we're looking at? Idle bots, on the other hand, might be a little bit more plausible. Unlike weapons and hats, crates and cases can be dropped whilst you're on in-game menus without actually needing to join a game server. It's not impossible that a significant number of the unexplained accounts are case drop farms. In other words, large numbers of TF2 accounts controlled by a small number of actual people. And all of these accounts are idling in the game menus just to get case drops, and then the people who control these accounts will trade them and sell them for profit. During this investigation, Tufty kindly put me in touch with a TF2 case trader who had reached out to him. That trader told me about an anonymous benefactor who runs a case farm and sells thousands of cases to this one individual every single day. But even if that is true, that one benefactor alone wouldn't explain these numbers. Again, we're talking about 50, 60, maybe 70,000 or more unexplained accounts, which have the game open 24/7. Not just a few thousand accounts, which would only need to open the game for a couple of minutes every couple of days. That said, this is of course just one example. If we take this person at their word, who's to say there aren't many, many more people all doing the same thing? Whilst the cause of the various unexplained player trends is of course the question of the day, it's probably equally important to ask, when did this all start? We've routinely celebrated TF2's player numbers, and as Tufty pointed out, even mainstream gaming media has joined in on those celebrations. But if this weirdness started in, say, August 2014, for example, does that mean we can't trust any player peak after that? Or has this always been happening, and TF2's unexplained numbers have been scaling proportionately with TF2's real player numbers? So, although we can assume that the number of real players isn't actually 150,000, we can at least say that TF2 genuinely did have its highest peak in June 2021. With all of that said, I'm reluctant to draw any conclusions. The case farm hypothesis is just that, a hypothesis. There's no actual evidence, just me using what very little information is available and trying to fit it to the numbers that we can see in front of us. Whilst there are indeed atypical spikes in player numbers pretty much since records began, there's no smoking gun that explains what these spikes are. In fact, there's no actual evidence for anything actually being amiss at all. Sure, TF2's in-game versus in-server numbers are nothing like its peers. And sure, TF2's daily peaks and troughs are nothing like its peers. And sure, TF2's peak players, both recent and historical, jump up and fall off kind of erratically. But these comparisons alone prove nothing. This video proves nothing. Maybe that is just how it is for Team Fortress 2, and its numbers might be abnormal, but abnormal and genuine, completely benign, albeit non-conformist. Maybe there's actually nothing broken nor nefarious going on at all, just some completely innocent, isolated quirkiness. But I don't know, I just think it's all a bit weird.